Welcome to the Close Encounter Club. I'm your host, Justin Gearhart. Well, this is it, the final chapter of Jeff Selver's incredible story. Over the last 2 episodes, we follow Jeff from his first encounter as a teenager to the shocking realization that his life was never really his own. Something was guiding him, pulling him toward an understanding he never asked for but couldn't ignore. Now, in this last installment, everything comes full circle. A trip across Canada leads to an encounter in broad daylight. Jeff is taken again, this time not by the elder, but by the twins. What they show him inside the craft changes everything. A plan to replace humanity, a warning about the future of Earth. I think you're going to hear a different side of Jeff during this episode. Mainly because part 1 and part 2 of The Rising were recorded on the same day. This recording you're about to hear was recorded several weeks later, just before Christmas, essentially. And that allowed me to have time to fully digest and process Jeff's story. I have been pretty transparent about my skepticism surrounding Jeff's experiences, but I haven't shared something with you that I think is very relevant. I came across a story on Reddit from a user named Forbidden Snacky. There's a lot of similarities between her experiences and Jeff's. I reached out to her, and I did have an incredible conversation with her. This was in between my conversations with Jeff. Forbidden Snacky's episode will be coming out in the next couple weeks, but I thought I should mention it here because I do talk about her in the episode a little bit. The craziest part of Jeff's story, though, is that he's been saying this for quite some time, and it just seems like the world outside is starting to catch up to what Jeff has known for decades. All right, so strap in. This is the last time we're going to blast off into insanity with Jeff Selver, but it's a pretty good one, and I'm excited to share it with you. This is episode 9, The Rising Part 3, and you're listening to the Close Encounter Club.
At some point, I think it's May, I decide to go across Canada. I'm pushing my boundaries. I don't know what I'm doing with myself. I'm traveling and I have no purpose, basically. I don't understand it. I don't understand what happened to me. I don't understand why it happened to me. As in terms of the consciousness experience that I had, like, what was this? Why was I told to leave my life? But when I saw the orb on Hornby Island on April of 1998, it gave purpose to what I was doing, that something was behind it. I just didn't understand it. So now I'm traveling across Canada. And so this is the summer of 1998. I lived in Vancouver. Well, I'm from BC. So at that time I was on Vancouver Island. I literally left Victoria on June 21st. I was very specific in some of these dates. And then made my way through BC, going up the Rocky Mountains, spending, driving for 4 or 5 hours and pulling over and camping. And I was just enjoying the summer like a free, 20-year-old would. I decided to kind of keep pushing my boundaries. I always wanted to isolate myself. That was the kind of strangeness of this time. And so I decided, instead of going across Canada, the prairies, I would go through the northern prairies. And so I was now in northern prairies. I went through northern Alberta, through Edmonton, and then now I was going through Saskatchewan. And I decided to go even further up. So I wanted to really see what this land was like up in northern Canada. And so I was now in the middle of the summer, July, and I was driving through these dirt roads. By the point you get to a certain height in these provinces, the roads don't even turn to normal roads. They're dirt roads. And there was these communities on a map that were interconnected. And so I decided to just explore these areas. It's somewhere along here that the next contact event happens. And it happens in broad daylight. It's isolated. I don't see cars. I remember very clearly not seeing cars on these roads. And so I was driving along, and I basically just become the me that knows them, the guy who has the identity that interacts with these aliens. I become aware while driving, and I stop the car. I get out, and I'm very aware that there's a large object over top of me. It's like there's a portion of it bleeding through. It sounds very unrealistic, but there was a sense of it being absolutely large, and yet I couldn't see its size. All I could see was a portion of something bleeding. When I say bleeding, it's as if there was like a cloak or something. And then there's a portion of the bottom not cloaked and it's right above me. And it takes me. So it takes me up and I'm willing about this, right? I have an agreement with them and they make the choice of when they come see me. And so, I become the me that knows them and I go inside the craft. The elder, the main gray alien that I have a relationship with or have main contact with, preempts me the prior contact event and says, I'll be gone, but you're going to work with the twins. And it's all telepathy. And the twins it wasn't her words. It was a telepathic imprint of two gray aliens. And there was a feeling of them being together and they were twins in this. It's like the words would translate to me, translate in my language as twins, but it was just a telepathic imprint and basically saying, you're going to work with the twins. You can ask them anything you want. I didn't know what that meant. And so now this was the 10th contact event. And I was very much, oh, okay. And putting everything together, right. I'll probably interacting with these entities called the twins. And so when I get inside, there's these two gray aliens in front of me. And yeah, they looked identical. And they basically greet me like, hello, Jeff. And they're using my name and, welcome. Thanks for coming with us today. And let us show you around. At first, they're wearing, this sounds unrealistic, but they're wearing lab coats. Now, I'm actually pretty convinced that it wasn't a real lab coat, but, they use telepathic imagery to communicate with things. And I'm pretty convinced they were using telepathy in my mind to like project an image that they were wearing lab coats and communicating, we're scientists, basically. Like the same thing, you're a scientist, that's what we are. Interesting thing about their request was it had a very distinct vibration of exchange. You give us this, and we'll give you what you want. You want information. So there was a weird moment of giving them, my biology, and it would be an exchange, and then I would get information from them. So I'm in a room, and after the biology, I'm basically kind of gathering my senses, you could say, and I'm in a room with medical beds. There's actually a dead cow on one of them, and it's implying something very interesting that I would put together only when my memories came out, that cattle mutilations were actually happening in the area of northern Saskatchewan, and I didn't know that. So I had the memory of this contact event without knowing all the extra cooperative details. So something is being implied here that cattle mutilations were part of this phenomenon with these entities, and not that I was thinking that way at the time, but they were just showing this or having it there in this contact event. And then beside, so there was a dead cow, and then on other medical beds were dead humans. And I didn't know what was going on. And so there was kind of a bit of the shock element. So I'm terrified of what's going on, like shocked to see dead humans. And so I'm asking, what are you doing? It's kind of a weird like miscommunication. The gray alien thinks I'm talking about generally what they're doing. I guess that's what's happening because I still don't understand it. But he says, we're creating the new human. And I'm like, yeah, but these people are dead. And he says, we asked for their permission. They gave us their permission. We asked them and they gave us their permission, basically. And it took me some time to understand these were actually exhumed bodies. They looked like they had been in a funeral. Their skin was withered. And they looked, the clothing looked funeral-like. And had they been underground kind of thing.
When you asked, what are you doing? Were you thinking it and they could read your thoughts?
Yeah, at this point, it's all telepathy, and I was pretty comfortable with them with the telepathy aspect. So you're forming the words. At least I was forming the words in my head at the time.
Got it.
You're saying it as if you're saying it, but you're not. And they don't do the same thing, but they understand it. So yeah, it's very interesting. They kind of master this whole telepathy thing. While I think humans are a bit clumsy with it, but it was basically what I said. What are you doing? So it was a very brief interaction. We asked for permission. And it's a very interesting thing to say. They asked for permission for dead bodies because then it implies, if you really think deeply about it, it implies they're respecting the spirit, actually. Even though the body was dead, they were still respecting the spirit to ask, hey, we're going to use this thing. That's very interesting. But regardless, the entity wants to show me something. It says, come with us. So we walk past the medical beds, and I'm in a large structure, I consider it a warehouse. And there's these stairs, And we go down the stairs and into the darkness of some kind of like dark warehouse space. And we're moving along, and it's just this, like large pillars, but rods that hold up the infrastructure are kind of like beside me, and it's very dark. And yet there's a lit up spot up ahead, like a lit up area.
Okay.
And we are moving up. Basically, as we walk up to these this lit up area, there are these tubes that have what I would definitely call gray alien human hybrids. They're full bodied, as if they had been grown as a body, as an adult, and waiting to have souls put in them, kind of thing. Like they're not on yet, almost. And they're slumping, actually. It's actually kind of slightly disturbing, and they're slumping in these tubes. They have black eyes, bald heads, and yeah, they're in these tubes, and the tubes are stacked. And then they're also going long, like way down on a hallway, like way, 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 way down. So we're looking at some kind of like factory. And also, it's really kind of disturbing. Like, it had a weird like warehouse type feel, because I was on this platform. As I like walked up, it's kind of a platform that looked down into another level. So there was like just a lot of tubes that kind of went down even further. And then there was another back wall along this one wall, like a V shape. This wall was of tubes.
Wow.
And so the gray alien is like, see, we're creating the new human. And, I'm in shock. Why? Also, telling me it's creating a new human had me freaked out. What's wrong with the old human? And also replacement of the old human. Largely what the alien tells me is it's because humans have failed at the tasks we had given them. It's a really loaded thing to say. I'm like, what tasks? And the entity is like, to save the planet. Humans were required to save the planet, so we're stepping in. I'm like, didn't we have a chance? And he said, you had plenty of chances. The nuclear weapon was the last opportunity of the chance. So a really weird perspective. I think we might think that the nuclear weapon was like the first time they intervened. And there's a weird thing being said, like that was the last time that they had given us an opportunity. And then something was underway from that point, that there was some type of interaction regarding nuclear weapons. Like they didn't like the nuclear weapons. So I'm freaking out, and I'm like, well, what's happening now? And he's like, well, we wait as we build the new humans, because I'm concerned for myself. So what happens to me? Like, also, I built a relationship with these entities. So I was very concerned for, myself. Like I thought, I had your DNA, and we had this relationship. Like, so what about me? And the entity is like nonchalant. Nothing will happen to you. We'll preserve you, actually, is the words he said. We'll preserve you. It'll be okay. Like nothing to worry about. So that threw me off, and I didn't understand. The entity brings me over in this kind of state I'm in to look at a hologram. So we come to this console, and a hologram comes up on the console. And it is a hologram of the Earth, of our planet Earth. These holograms are like consciousness holograms. And so they impart information on, you can say, beyond eyes, into another level. So you can actually feel you can feel information. So it's communicating more information than the human 3D, 3-dimensional stuff. This is in depth. I can feel it. I can feel information from it. So I feel that a planet is weak, like as if like instability is going on. And I actually felt very distinctly the biosphere was being disturbed. And all of a sudden on this hologram, like bites were being taken out of the land. So it has like a symbolic representation. Bites are being taken out like an apple. Someone's eating an apple. And you're not taking bites out of the planet, but out of the surface. So where there was once green and land, it was turning brown.
I see. So
bites are being taken out, and it's kind of like taking away at the planet. And as that's happening, is this huge instability. So as if the biosphere, very specifically, the biosphere was at threat, and that meant everything: atmosphere, land, water, all of it. And so it's instability. And then as the biting chunks went up, the entire thing lit up into flames. Like someone had struck a match, and it just went boosh, and the whole planet went into flames. Right from the bottom to the top, it got remade, as if like it's like da 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 da. So it just gets remade, and it's the same Earth, but it has a new feel. I'm looking at relatively North America, so it is kind of the way the globe is positioned towards me. North America is front and center, And in the center of North America, dead center, was a massive city. It was clear. Everything had altars. Nothing was the same. Gray aliens dominated. Now, what do I mean by that domination? It is a hologram, so I was able to pick some of these kind of minute details up. I thought they dominated. It's not the right word, but it's kind of the word that matches, because it's more like nature. It's more like whale pods. You know, we're one whale pod and gray aliens are another, and then they come and no, they don't dominate, but they definitely try to curb behaviors, right? They don't try to take over in a dictatorial government, politics, military, all these very human things. That's not what they are. More nature, and it's to curb. And there was a distinct feeling that they now kind of ran the show.
Would it be kind of akin to the zookeeper hypothesis, where have you heard that? Have you heard of that? Are you familiar with that theory?
I think a little bit. Yeah, I think I've been hearing that being used into context. If there's anything else you could add to that.
It's basically the idea that the Greys or aliens have created us in some manner, in some sort of like a project, almost kind of like what you're saying. Just as if a zookeeper watches over, tigers and lions and gorillas at a zoo, it's the same analogy with the Greys. So they're observing us. They show themselves when they need to, and their main objective would be to preserve us and to, like you're saying, almost like nurture nature, like course correct ourselves and make sure we don't hurt ourselves and that we're doing the right thing, but from like a zookeeper, the way the zookeeper does that with animals. Like they only interact when they absolutely have to and show themselves when they absolutely have to, kind of thing.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think that's pretty adept at a proper metaphor to what's going on here.
Okay.
And in that case, it's actually like the animal population got out of control. Mm-hmm. Starts destroying its cage, if you will. Yep. And then the zookeeper has to come in and start managing, find a new way to manage and be a bit more present in the cage.
That makes sense.
Something like that. Yeah, I think that's something like that's kind of what's going on here.
Okay.
So yeah, that was pretty clear. Another actual like real strong telepathic imprint that came from that hologram was that nature would be saved. So I think only now I'm finding cooperation on the government level. Daniel Sheenan talked about this, that he, from his inside sources, the lawyer, that mantids were highly concerned for the planet and the life preserving capabilities of the planet. And when I was first talking like this back in even 2019, most in the UFO field thought that planetary destruction was some kind of hoax, and they weren't believing this information. And I was saying, no, I'm pretty certain these gray aliens are actually very, very invested and concerned for this and this type of damage. And yeah, and it just seems the more information's coming out, it actually is the one of the main guiding, motivations why aliens are actually interacting with us is that we're damaging the biosphere as a whole. So that was communicated to me through the hologram. Once I pulled away from it, I repeat again, so what's going to happen? He's like, we wait as we build the new humans. So he kind of repeats what he said last time to me about the new humans. So we go back up, and I was in this environment with the aliens is very telepathically vulnerable. And now I was hurt. And it didn't feel good to be in this space. I wasn't scared, but I was definitely distraught at the human scenario of what was going on. And so the entity kind of takes control. And so it brings me back over we went back upstairs and takes me to beside the humans, the dead humans, and says, we created this mind. And I'm like, he actually says we created the mind, and we created it to have this kind of grabbing function. So he references in a weird telepathic imprint this whole thing where the mind, the human brain it's like the ego. And I have now learned that there is a spot in the brain that is the ego. And the idea being is, the self-preservation aspect of the self, of the individual self, the need to hoard or the need to own or the need to, fight for what is yours, I guess, right? Which is basically what's constitutes our entire world, capitalism and our jobs and everything we do. We're fighting for our family, we're fighting for ourselves and our identities and everything. And so I guess, and they called it, I just transferred that, what the telepathic imprint was, as a grabbing function. So this idea that the mind has this tendency to kind of own for itself. And he said, we created this grabbing function. So I said, why did you create a grabbing function? And he said, because it helps, like, it helped you at the time that it was created. So it basically was perfect for the time that it happened. And it helped us develop society at the time. It helped pull us out of our less developed ways, is the whole premise. But there was a problem, was that now it was the basis of our entire society and kind of our entire world. It's a very interesting connection. Not at this point does he mention religions, but he'll mention religions at another point in our dialogue. But it's very interesting because he's talking about this idea that we're technically a separatist species, a species that fights for ourselves always. And we've actually developed our systems around that. When you really look at it philosophically, it's really hard not to it's really hard to argue against it, because he is pretty right that there's kind of this breakdown in all of our economics and all of our systems, including like healthcare and education. It's all not holistic. It's all something that has to fight for itself. Even though we're attempting for a holistic structure, a society that is holistic, we typically, everything is fighting against itself. And it might be breaking down at this point now in our present, but he's basically just saying that your world is it's the grabbing function has now created your world, and it's too embedded in your world. And he'll reference religions in a couple, a little bit later. But the point when he says religions is the same thing, that, had you been able to come together as a human species with even your religions weren't able to do it. And that's what's so fascinating is the human religions, if you really think about them, they're all kind of trying to do the same thing. And somehow, even in this kind of the structure of our own brains, didn't allow us to say, hey, man, you're worshiping God, and so are we. So how about we find a way to come together? And instead, every religion fought for themselves. And even at this global level, they're saying, no, my religion is better than your religion. And yeah, there's peace amongst them, but there's still separation, right? They don't know how to come together in any. Even though everyone's worshiping relatively the same thing, no one can figure out how to bring it all together. And he basically says if you had learned to come together in your religion, you would have made it over this hump, which is very fascinating. Because if we had found a way as a collective species to find a common ground as a whole entire worldwide collective, we would have made it over this challenge that we're about to face, which I guess is the planet and the population. And so it's a very interesting philosophical argument, I'd have to say, and he makes that case right here in the contact event.
That is very unsettling to me. It reminds me of like the great filter argument a little bit. Are you familiar with that at all?
No, you can enlighten me. Yeah.
So the great filter, it's actually like an astrophysicist perspective on things, that the Fermi paradox is, if the universe is so big, so if there are aliens out there, where are they? Like, we don't see them at all, right? And one of the explanations of Fermi's paradox is, well, there must be some sort of great filter that we aren't sure if we've gone through it or not, but perhaps other intelligent life, they get to a certain point, and in order to become like a interplanetary species, or to kind of get through to the next level, so to speak, there seems to be some sort of great filter, whether it be asteroids destroying planets too frequently, or AI, or whatever it may be. And as you're talking about this, it makes me think of, well, perhaps maybe religion is the great filter, that there's different religions throughout the world, and like you said, it divides us rather than unites us. So if we can't figure out how to get along, essentially, and we lack empathy for our neighbor, that could be our downfall. Maybe that's a great filter in a way, which is a horrifying thought, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think the idea is that there was this last bit that we needed to achieve as a species. and we weren't able to make it. So there's actually, and there is, like, this is what, the humbling thing that Lou Elizondo talks about, right? Like, that's exactly what this is. This is a scale of maturity that, and actually I have to say something too. This is what all relationships are, right? All relationships are, when you come, you've been living your life the way you are, and then all of a sudden someone comes up in your life and they're full of kindness and full of compassion, then you say, hey, I want to be like that. And you learn off them, right? And so you're like, oh, okay, I need to learn how to be kind and compassionate because I'm learning what it looks like to be kind and compassionate. And then you think about that. And we do that for all of our behaviors. All of the human species, we learn from each other about how to behave. And if you're ever, dealt with high spiritual people, like maybe a guru, this is what the gurus are all about, because the guru is actually pointing at the guru inside yourself. So then you get the whole thing about it. You're like, okay, I have to approach this part of myself to get on the level of the guru. This is what the aliens are going to do to the entire human species, right? It's going to put a mirror up against us. And when we weren't able to come together as a collective, it's going to be obvious, here's a real mature species who figured this stuff out, whatever, millions of years ago or something. We are going to be, we're going to have that shock. And it's going to be a collective shock of looking in the mirror that we couldn't get our act together. And I think that's going to be, I think some of us will take that, but I don't think all of us will take that. It's going to be a bit nutty. Both Lil Elizondo mentioned the shock that we would be in, the ominous, right? How it would be ominous for us, some kind of like learning about this and how it impact us. And Kirkpatrick, the other general, he was at the Soul Foundation, and he was mentioning how experiencers, what is it going to be like when a species is above us and we're interacting with them?
We're no longer the highest animal in the food chain.
Yeah, there will be a psychology that involves how we handle, such maturity or such a degree of wisdom or understanding and maybe self-collection. So yeah, there's going to be some, this will be a whole part of the actual psychology of disclosure. So
yeah. Wow. Okay. So they were saying that we couldn't pull it together. Even the religions of the world failed, and you were kind of having this like somber moment. That's where we left. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, so the entity wants to show me one last thing, kind of a way to top it off. We go into it takes me to a room that's attached to this space I was in with them, with all the beds, medical beds, and opens this door. And inside is a big, bright ball of light. So I'm like, what's this? But I could actually feel what it was. And it was definitely the intelligence of the computer, of the craft. It was the intelligence. And the entity says, this is our creator. This is God. I don't know anybody else who has quite has my experience, that I can actually say for certainty that this is God. So, what does that mean? What I actually am convinced is that the quantum field is alive, and that quantum field is something that's permeating all of us, you and me, all the world, everything. It's permeating. It's underneath all reality. That's basically what they're saying with quantum reality. There's non-locality underneath everything. Well, what if that is the God of, the ancient religions, or that's the Brahma, if you will, of the Vedas, kind of thing. And then with a quantum computer, you can tap into it. So then what happens? And I think that's what we're dealing with here, where it is actually real. There is the quantum consciousness field underneath all reality. And then, you can tap into it. And so I experienced, when I became that ball of light in my first contact event in 1993, I experienced a unity with the craft and with the entities in the craft. And that's what this was. I had already had my spiritual awakening where I touched God. And all three were the same thing. So these guys have utilized this God field, and they took it and they're utilizing it and working with it. So the entity is showing me that in this very moment. So this is God. This is our God. This is the creator. And so basically he says, so everything we're doing is in line with the natural order, and it has a purpose and a plan. And the plan is to evolve, and it's to evolve humans, and it's to evolve our society, our species, and to evolve Earth's global society. And so he was basically, there's these crazy, scary looking hybrids in the basement. And yeah, there's this kind of dysfunction that's going on with the human species that that we're stepping in on, and God's involved. Like, there's the angelic hymns can play because it is divine actually occurring, as opposed to it being scary. And that's what's being said here. And basically, I'm in shock, but I'm understanding that this thing makes it work. And I think I'm certain I'm saying it out loud. And in the contact event, like, you make it work. Like, you're the decision maker. Like, I'm talking to this ball of light, and it's making sense to me that it's part of a grander plan. Like, someone ever touches divinity in their lives, end up feeling that there's a larger plan to life. Maybe your life has a larger plan. Like, it's got a larger purpose that has meaning and is good and is right and is beneficial. And that's what happens in this moment, where I'm getting, okay, this is like, there's a plan here. There's a purpose that's larger, and it's got the kind of spirit behind it. And so that's what they're confirming for me in this moment. And then when I leave this room, the alien shows me on a computer, like, as we're walking by it, a human and a hybrid or side by side. And he says, so they'll be like, basically what it will be is humans and our species, these hybrids, working side by side, merging this species into one over time. So an idea that, they'll be with us, not domination, not politics, not war, that it's actually about almost an idea of friendship and marriage and children. So an idea of society is actually what it really was emphasizing. That's the gist of that contact event. He basically gives me some words that, you'll be playing a part in this, which I guess that's what these moments are right now. When the time is right, kind of thing, he says. And so that was the gist of that. He put me back down onto the road, and I got back in the car, and I was left with this feeling of, yeah, that was disturbing, but I did believe in the positivity of it. Like, I came out with like, okay, whoa, but this is how they were doing it, right? They were giving me these contact events, and they were stuffing everything in, and then put me on my way. And I wasn't really understanding the degree or the extent of what was happening to me, just that they were doing these things and telling me these things. And I kept thinking it meant at that time I would have my memories. And eventually this very year, I'll start fighting with them about it. But at the time, I thought that's what would happen. But it turned out these would be memories for me to regain almost 2 decades later. But yeah, so that's what happens. And then that's it. I'm back in the car and I'm driving off, and the entire thing gets, phased out or sealed up. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I was going to wait until I want to try to get through maybe at least 2 of these contact events and then talk about current events, but screw it. I'm going to talk about it now. So I'm actually in school right now, and I just started an AI class, like on Monday, cool. I think it was. It's been like a focus of mine, is like quantum computing and AI and all that kind of jazz.
Amazing.
So I'm pretty well versed in that sort of thing. I'm definitely not an expert, but I'll share something with you quick. I'll give your voice a break. So on this past Monday night, I got so freaked out that I had to put my phone down and just like put on Home Alone or something, like something nostalgic, just to like disconnect from like social media and just everything.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
I was just questioning, why the hell am I trying to do this podcast? Because like it's just like I was overwhelming. I had like people, like friends and family, and some people that I've been working with on the podcast, like ask, what do you think about these drones and all this kind of stuff. I just had this really, really unsettling fact. Again, I'm not sure how much you know about quantum computing. It sounds like you know somewhat from your story.
Some, yeah.
Google's new Willow chip, it has like 103 qubits, I think, on it. And there's all these articles out there that say that, that they're saying that in theory it's proof of the many worlds or multiverse.
That's right. I saw that. I saw that.
And
Yeah.
it got me thinking again, and this is why I was actually really excited to talk to you. I want to specifically talk about this and hear your insights on it. But I was reading all this stuff about Google, and I came across this article that was saying that they're actually striking a deal with some power company. I forget what it is, and they're looking to build several, upwards of like 8 power plants for Google on their campus, I believe. They're specifically designed for quantum computing and the power that's required
Right.
for the quantum computer and the future of quantum computing. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm definitely a novice ufologist, I guess you could say. Like I know some of it, and I watch a lot of videos, and I try, but I'm not an expert at this. But I do know that in the past, it seems like these crafts, these UAPs, as they're calling them now, are attracted to nuclear. And I've always assumed, well, like the zookeeper hypothesis, they were making sure those crazy apes in the zoo aren't gonna blow themselves up with nukes. So like they see we have nuclear power, and they're showing themselves, even potentially meddling with the nuclear controls to show that I can turn this off or turn them on. Like I'm the big fish in the pond kind of deal, right? And with this whole Willow chip from Google, it got me thinking, well, hold on a second. It looks like we need nuclear power and to understand fusion in ways that maybe we don't understand yet to be able to power these quantum computers, because maybe we can't do it any other way. So maybe nuclear and quantum are like very much intertangled, and these species know that. So they know that we have this nuclear power, but we're like, it's a horrible analogy, but like a toddler with a gun. Like we have this crazy
Right.
power, but we don't know what to do with it, and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like, as of this past few weeks since they released this news about this Willow chip, that maybe we're not a toddler anymore, and maybe we're starting to become like an adolescent a little bit and understand the pieces of this puzzle are starting to come together a little bit. And this nuclear piece fits here, this quantum piece fits here, this UAP piece fits over here, and all of a sudden we're starting to paint this picture a little bit. And it's the part that's unnerving is it just seems like tech companies, I won't specifically name Google, but I guess I just did. It seems like they're going so fast at a rate that they just want to try to get a quantum computer, and the biggest, best, fastest quantum computer, that they're not stopping and asking themselves, like, should we? It's almost like the Jurassic Park movie where they said, well, was it oh my gosh, I forget the actor's name.
Chris Pratt or
no,
something?
the older one, Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, yeah.
It was Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum.
And he says, like you thought so much about could you that you just didn't ask yourself, should you? Kind of, I forget the exact quote, but
yeah, it's capitalism, right? That does that.
Yeah,
but it's not a scientific for humanity investment. It's a corporate, how can we be the best at our product investment? And it's such a weird thing, because we're hindering to some degree that development, because the attention is not 100% for our best interests. It's for Google's best interest as a corporation.
Yeah. It's the getting mind that they were referring to other. It's like the ego. It's I just want the biggest, baddest, coolest, fastest computer that there is. That I just don't think we understand the cocoon that we're making, and then the butterfly that's coming out of it. Like, that's just a complete unknown. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be a good thing, but then you combine that with AI, and like that's just where it gets terrifying in my eyes, where you have this AI that all of a sudden has access to all this immense data in the blink of an eye. I mean, did you hear the statistic that this new quantum computer did 10 septillion years of calculation that a classic computer can do in like 5 minutes? Like,
I've heard this. Yeah, I've heard it would be able to do that,
Yeah.
and that doesn't surprise me anymore. That is doing
it's scary, but
yeah, it's intense. Yeah. What's interesting though is, as you talk about that and talk about how scary it is, it's like, it's very interesting that some of the stuff people is what people see on Craft. So what the timing of all this, right? Like, so I'll just quickly jump ahead, but the elder told me in my 24th contact event that there's going to be a planet event, and I'm asking when's it going to happen, and she said soon. We're holding it off. I said why, and she said to get humans ready. And that's such a weird line, and it had me analyzing this whole scenario. I'm pretty convinced that these entities are not just the gray aliens we perceive them to be. That there may be, they're entities from beyond, from before, fairies and all that kind of stuff, and that they've interacting with humans for a while. So then why are you saying that unless you were involved in some of the progress of humanity over the last decades, right? And apparently, so Michael Talbot is the originator of the holographic universe, of the originator of the simulation theory, and he brought together a bunch of scientists who said brought together quantum reality with a bunch of scientists and said, what do you think of this as a version of reality? Because this would answer everything. This would answer all spirituality, all psychic phenomenon, combined it with quantum, combined it with science, combined it with the matter and everything. And they agreed. And so he put out the book, The Holographic Universe. Well, Michael Talbot was a contactee. So you can see a picture here of someone who was inspired by the aliens to help move us forward in some of these theories. And maybe the aliens were doing things behind the scenes, and things like quantum and AI and all this stuff merging at a time when aliens are now being very public and being very visible is such a weird synchronicity, unless some of this was planned and they were kind of moving us up. So when we do merge, we aren't freaked out by some of this tech. I think that's what some of this is. They've been evolving us, helping. In fact, the first contact event, they are humanity's agents of change. So yeah, when you start looking at quantum and computers, this is their world. And so I do think that something is that's why I don't look at the dark side of it. I think, yeah, humans can be dark, and I'm certain that's a pretty crazy scenario. I believe there's a reason that they're intervening at this time, and it looks really all like planned in some weird, bigger way, right?
Yeah, I could not agree more with you. I just had this thought the other day that, it seems like, I forget the scale, the person that made the scale, but like the type 1 civilization, that when you get to that point, you harness the power of your planet, I think is what it is. And then a type 2 is the sun, and then type 3, I think, is the galaxy, if I'm not mistaken. So it kind of makes sense to me that we're not even a type 1 civilization yet, because we can't even harness all the power and energy that's in our planet. We're not efficient with it, as what you're saying. And I do agree with you. I get this deep sense in me that the merging of AI and quantum computing, and yeah, there's some pretty skeptical people that I work with that I think are starting to realize, like, these crafts that they're starting to show. Even the Congress is starting to say this, like, maybe these crafts are real. Like, they are starting to show themselves more. Like, it just seems like everything, I keep describing it as a swell. It seems like there's this swell of change that's happening. Almost, I'm not going to say we're about to turn into a type 1 civilization yet. That might be 100 years out or something. But it seems like we might be getting to like a pretty big checkpoint, like a 0.5 or something like that, where once quantum and AI and all these things start to go, it's going to happen real quick. Our world is going to change in ways that I think most people aren't ready for, and they might unlock secrets to the universe that some people, I think, are really going to have a hard time digesting.
Yeah, I agree. It will be in their face, and they won't be able to deny it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've been denying it all their lives.
I just have this really weird visual in my head right now of, I guess it would be probably Trump and maybe like the prime ministers of the world and Putin and, all the leaders up on a stage together, like united, and saying, we're not alone. And that's as like united front. And I think if that happens anytime in my lifetime, which, I don't think it's that out of the most recent events that have kind of been transpiring since even the last time we spoke, I mean, that doesn't seem like it's going to be that far off. Like it doesn't like if I said that 2 years ago, I'd be like, no way. But like I feel like we're closer now than we ever have before.
Yeah. It's I have reason to believe it won't be like that.
Really?
But but I believe, well, even now, most people are getting that they've already admitted they're here. So, right, this is what like the second Congress, like we had people asking about hybrids, like one of the
Yeah, I saw that.
like this is already making steps, and Chuck Schumer, right? He's already said outright, if you don't know what these drones are, then they are unidentified aerial phenomenon. Like, why are you calling them drones? If you don't know what their origins are, then this is UAP. And so it's a weird game being played, and there might be reason not to because of the very things that they've been telling me, which look to be all pretty lining up. That there's a movement here, there's a plan here, and they may not have the ability to talk about it without talking about all of it. That's what I think is the problem. I think this is a massive picture, and we thought it would be take me to your leader, landing on the White House lawn, nanu, nanu, live long and prosper, and it's not. It's like something much more extreme and weird and hard to wrap our own head around. And then I think they may have trouble communicating it as well too, and not really know how to talk about it because it's such a strange thing. And by bringing up one, you bring up the rest, and you bring up one thing: aliens are here. All of a sudden, people want to see them, want to meet them, want to know about them, and they may not be able to handle some of this stuff. I mean, physically, you might not be able to interact with them, and because they come from alternate realms, and all of a sudden you have to start explaining that part, and so it's like a weird mixed bag that I think opens up. Actually, the general. I really wish I had everyone's names down. He was the rear admiral. That's all I remember. He was one of the four in the Senate House the last time the Senate, the Senate spoke with the whistleblowers. And
yeah, the ocean guy, the
ocean guy. That's a rear admiral ocean guy. Yeah, the ocean guy. Yeah, we'll get his name in there sometime.
Yeah, I'll put it in here. It's fine. I know
edit it in. Yeah, it'll be like a robot saying it. AI will say his name.
Yeah.
This is the AI bot that Jeff just summoned. Justin and Jeff are referring to Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet.
He actually said in a podcast, like just a week before going to the Senate, he actually said, yeah, there's a reason we can't talk about the UAP because it's exposed as sensitive military secrets. He said, but yes, there's another that we've also become aware of a greater reality. And the American public needs to know about that greater reality. So we definitely need to be talking about that. And, Bob Bigelow's, who had, crashed UFO parts, the guy now goes onto a kick studying the afterlife, right? Like this is where we're going. And that's why there's a whole mixed bag that goes along with this. And it's quite large. And you can see they've been struggling, figuring out how to communicate about it. And,
yeah. It's very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. I want to get to the next big event.
Sure.
But I guess the last thing I'll say before we do that, or at least the last topic is, I'm not sure if you're aware of this either, but I actually just recently put out like an Instagram reel about it because there's a YouTube channel called Area 52 Investigations. It's actually a really, really well done channel. And Chris Ramsey, I think, is the host's name. And he did a series on this 4chan whistleblower that came out in, I think, 22, I think. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And some of the things that he was saying back in 22, before even Immaculate Constellation, that document came out to Congress just, a couple weeks ago or whatever it was, that is very eerie. And you're kind of what you're saying, like the odds of that happening just by chance are probably near like zero. Like that's it in my mind, at least. I'll say this, that that confirmed that program is 1,000% real, even more so than just them saying Congress that it is.
Yeah.
And then some of the things that gentleman was saying, I think it was actually, I don't even know if we know there's gender, right? But that the person that was the
person who
whistleblower,
leaked it.
yeah. I mean, saying that there's a craft in the Bermuda Triangle that does like the
makes UFOs.
and all that stuff. I'm just like, a lot of that stuff seems to be checking out, and
I have I have an insider guy that I know, and he's confirmed for me that is real. Yeah,
really. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, it explains
it doesn't surprise
a lot
me either. Actually,
it explains a lot of the weird things that happen in the Bermuda Triangle with ships and planes. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
it does.
It explains that. It explains a lot of the sightings. It explains Diana Pasulka's theory that some of the crashes appear to be like donations, where like if it's an unmanned drone and it's I mean, I could imagine the power of these beings if they wanted to kind of push us along. It would make sense if they can customize every craft and kind of build things to spec. Let's build a little gift for these crazy monkeys with nukes and just like send it out there and purposely have it crash. Here you go. Here's fiber optics or whatever it may be. Like that, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, and that there would be specific crafts that they get in their hands that have specific purposes that, you're not looking at weapons. So not that I even haven't heard of a UFO having a weapon, but they're very specific about what they're there for giving. And it's so they can, in some cases, right, they apparently, according to Lou Elizondo, they have stuff they can't even operate. So they don't even know how to I think in one case they can't open it. So it's like a craft. So they get these things in their hands and he said this, that they're given to them. Yeah. It's very fascinating. And it does look like that. Yeah. That's seeding to get things, to get us, familiar with some of the stuff.
Yeah. And I mentioned the whistleblower, but I mean, that's just one example. Look at yourself. Look at Bob Lazar. Look at Forbidden Snacky that I just spoke to a couple weeks ago. She's been saying these things way before like the public knew about them. And oftentimes I'm sure you've dealt with this. Oh, this guy's nuts. Or these people are crazy. They think that aliens are here. But like, look where we're at. Like this, like open your eyes, it's 1 + 1 = 2 people.
And it's really sad too, because the way people deal with this information is first they reject it. First it's outright nonsense. And then they don't even get to a state where they say, oh my God, you were right. I'm sorry. They start treating it like, okay, so fine. What? Aliens are here. Who cares? And then they make a jump. And then it's like, it's a weird game in their heads, right? Where they can never come back to oh my God, I was humiliating that person. Or
exactly. It's even just myself. Like I'm not a big paranormal guy. I'm not a big UFO guy. I mean, probably UFOs I find the most interesting just because of everything that's been happening now. But just doing this podcast, and the amount of people that have experiences, I maybe spoke to maybe 15 of them at this point, maybe 20.
Yeah.
And my whole perception of reality has changed in the last 2 months, 3 months or so that I've been doing this. And the whole reason that has happened is because I just went into this project with an open mind. Like I told you, I try to come in these completely blind, just looking at it from a kind of a scientific way, but keeping a completely open mind with everything. And if people do that, number one, I think it's healthy because, as you said, when the other shoe drops, whatever that shoe may be, people like myself and you and other people that have been having an open mind or having experiences themselves are going to be better off at the end because of it, because they're open-minded. And those people that just shun other people, you're going to have a rude awakening, I think, at some point in the future when this happens.
Yeah, I still get ontological shock. There's still scales of this. There's scales of it. And it's I think I just wrote a Facebook post. I said, the aliens doing this is the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
It's not the tip of the iceberg. This is the tip of the tip. Yeah. It's like, this is tiny steps is what this is.
I was going to get some Christmas shopping done last night, and I counted. I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm like maybe 90 miles or so from New Jersey, like where these drones are happening.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I counted 6 drones from the time.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Interesting.
Nope. Dead serious. Now,
That's how many there are, eh? Wow.
I know you mentioned earlier that, you don't know what they are. These were 100% drones. Like they had.
I didn't say that. I
they
didn't say that.
You didn't? Oh, I thought you did.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I know exactly what they are.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I know exactly what they are. Yeah.
Do tell.
Yeah. Well, I can speak for some of them because some of them match exactly the entities that have been flying around my home. And I got a video. I was just on Cosmic Convergence, one of the podcasts, and I was showing all my videos and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and they were doing that. They were doing that with me in June. They started in June with me.
Really?
And so when I saw some of the news reports, I thought, oh, you're describing exactly what I've been seeing. And I was tight-lipped about it, and I started talking about it on Reddit, and now I just made a public post on Facebook.
Is it those plasmoid things? Is that what you're referring to? Or
I'm referring to, okay, my entity turned into a plane. Yeah, so both. I have all the orb stuff, which happened like in the early days, but yeah, the planes, man. My gray alien is a black plane. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think you just.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell, but I think you might have just blew my mind a little bit there. So you're saying that?
Yeah, this is the beginning of it, man. The shape-shifting craft stuff is a whole other game, and I saw it with my own eyes, and I started talking to my some researcher friends, and long reports of helicopters turning into UFOs, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so we got shape-shifting going on here, and yeah, without a doubt, some of those objects, that especially the hum, there were very specific details that were matching my experience. That you're looking at a plane that's only a couple hundred feet in the air that's got a hum and not a normal plane sound. Those type of details. The FAA lights are bonkers if they're using at all, or they're kind of not clear FAA lights. So weird things like that, and close flybys that are in dangerous areas. I'm talking about flybys only hundreds of feet from my building, things like that, and black. And in some cases, I'm seeing shape shifting and stuff. Yeah. So
my jaw, I'm like freaked out right now. So I saw this video. I'm not religious at all.
Yeah.
But I saw this video. I can't believe I'm telling you this right now, but I'm going to do it anyway. I saw this video where someone saw like a plasmoid, and they said they were just talking to it like with their mind, and then they said something about Jesus, and the second they mentioned Jesus, this thing like started moving and going all crazy and whatever. So I just found that's interesting, because Miriam, who's a good friend of mine, who was in episode 1, she said the same thing. She said this creature came into her room. She was very frightened, and she called on the name of Jesus. She started praying, and it left her alone. Like it disappeared. And when I saw that, I'm like, that's an interesting thing. So when I was out yesterday and I was Christmas shopping, I saw what I thought was like a drone. And the reason I say that is because it was very distinct features. The 5 that I saw had a solid green light, and then they had a white light that was flash, flash, and then like strobe, flash, flash, strobe, like that, right?
Yeah,
and
very good.
And I knew that, and I saw them, and they looked like drones, like physically looked like drones. And in the sky, pretty far away, I saw green light, flash, flash, whatever. And I just said, I'm just gonna try something. And I just said, how's it going, Jesus? Or I said something in my mind about Jesus, and that green flash, flicker thing turned into a plane.
Yeah.
And like the second that I said something about Jesus, it was like, nope, plane. And at the time, I didn't know you were going to say all this. I was just like, oh, silly me. I was a plane the whole time. Like, I'm going to go back to shopping.
Oh, so it's a synchronicity for you. That's great. Yep. That's great.
That's interesting. That's very
interesting. Yeah. This is what we're dealing with.
Wow.
Actually, I think the key words I have are what we thought was multiple different phenomena is in fact one phenomenon manifesting itself in multiple different ways.
That makes sense.
And they're reality creators. That's the other extreme to this. All of this is gentle. This is their nature too. This is how, as far as I know, I've been interacting with these types of objects for 5 years now. And and they're gentle and very, if you get terrified, they actually move away. So yeah, and you can communicate with them, and that's what I do as well too. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Welcome to the club.
I mean, just even Stephen Greer, I know, I'll be honest, I was one of them. He has that,
C5,
like, is
yeah,
it CE5, where they get a group of people together and they meditate? And at first, my first reaction was, "No way. I meditate all the time. I don't see anything in the skies. Like, that's not," but that was me being ignorant, because now I'm just like, the more as time progresses, it seems more and more correct. I mean, I literally had that experience. Could it have just been a plane? Sure, it could have been. I don't know. What reality am I in? I have no idea. But what you just said completely lines up with what happened to me yesterday, if I'm being honest with myself and not trying to have any prejudgments.
I always want to always push it. It's funny how I'm always that nature, but it's the reason all this is because everything is consciousness, and it really is God. It's like the universe is alive, and then their tech, and there's a weird thing that's what I experienced. And when you have to go down to the realm of non-duality, the realm of outside the mind, outside the brain. I'm in unity with things, so I can feel myself in the mountains, and when the trees are swaying, it's swaying inside my heart, and it's a degree of outside your brain. Well, this is what they're utilizing, and so it's not physics. It's not physics doing this. It's consciousness doing this. It's them utilizing. And so, yeah, I don't know how far you were from that orb, or that drone looking thing that turned into a plane. But think of the distance, and all it was attention and focus, right? Which is what consciousness is, right? That's just awareness. You put awareness on that thing, and then you communicated a line of awareness, which wasn't even a line. It would have been beyond the speed of light, right? You just would have connected with it with your thought, and then it's instantly changing into something, responding, if you will, to you. And it's doing it at the degree with which it thinks you can handle. And it's part of you. It's probably aware of some degree of your reality and your ability to handle this. So it's not distorting things crazily, but it's doing it to a degree with which you are getting confirmation about something, right? It's very fascinating, and there's no other answer except for consciousness being the entire strata of all of this. And this is what Lou Elizondo was saying from day one. Rudy Schultz who worked with Susie Hansen on her book, Dual Soul Connection, has a really good layout of the physics of a craft if it's out of consciousness. And all of this stuff makes sense. Stopping time, shape-shifting, right? Lights that don't resonate any radiance, right? When UFOs shoot beams, there's no radiant light. So it's just a laser that doesn't radiate light. Like how we don't have a physics that the light doesn't do that in our physics, but it would if it's consciousness, right? So there's all this like control you can gain when you're dealing with a consciousness craft. And it's obviously mixed with AI. That's the twist of it too. It's like quantum AI. Yeah, quantum AI is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about this. 20 some years ago, when you were experiencing these things, we didn't know what quantum entanglement was. Like that, we just thought that was just like, that was science fiction. Like that's not a real thing. We weren't at that technological level. So people would think, what's the old saying? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
Well, now the question is, if a tree falls in the forest and it's no one's around to see it, does it even exist? Because it's like it's and that's like a real scientific thing that we can duplicate, and that we have a word for it now, and it's a real thing that we just don't understand. And if you extrapolate that out, okay, let's say we do understand quantum physics and we do understand how to really utilize quantum entanglement. Well, yeah, I mean, you're really the master of the universe then. You can probably learn to create matter from nothing. And you could probably start doing some things that don't seem real now. But I don't know. I could talk to you about this stuff forever. I love it.
I know and this is where it goes, right? This is where it goes. And this is what they showed me, and what it's all about is all that God stuff, enlightenment. Like this is what it was. I went into a room, I was 16 years old, and the thing we call enlightenment, condensing your kundalini or whatever as an energy form, you're experiencing pure bliss. You have unity instantly with everything in the room I was in. Like these things are like stuff that monks take a lifetime to get into, right? Like it's a strange, instantaneous, and it's merging with you. So it's a degree of strange, merging of spirit. It's not even of the brain. And people would expect all this stuff to be brain games. It's all, you're feeling like it's a spirit because they know how to get in your head. And that's my whole story, is the proof that, if you believe my story, you can't twist it. And that's the whole thing. It just can't be twisted. They interacted with my consciousness, with my spirit, with my eternal self. So then they've got to this whole other level with their quantum tech that they're able to, explore, right, afterlives and whatever dimensions they're going into and all this other stuff. They're able to now quantify it, label it in ways that humans can only dream about through our astral projections and all that kind of stuff. Now this stuff will be able to be solidified, and this might be what I think this is the idea, is that this is what they're all about, is an exploratory dimensional species that's very scientific about going into dimensions with their quantum tech. And I think this might get to expose to us very soon.
Yeah, I think so. And I do think even something as simple as quantum computing and AI, when those two things merge, I think a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned, like astral projection, sleep paralysis, even though we kind of think we know what that is, but it's still a little bit unknown, consciousness, like all these things, all these experience, ghost is like the new UFO, because it has such like a connotation. When someone says ghost, they think of this like white sheet like thing that's
sheet. Yeah.
But like, what is it really? I mean, it's I think ghosts are probably, I'm using air quotes, but ghosts are probably real. We just don't understand what they are. It's a spirit or consciousness trapped in time. Is it? There's all these things that, if you rephrase it, it all of a sudden kind of fits into the paradigm of what we're talking about. And I think quantum and AI, when they merge, I think we're going to realize that a lot of this phenomenon that people have been experiencing for centuries is 1,000% real. We just don't understand it right at this present moment. So
yeah, agreed. 100% agreed.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with the rest of this story.
The last one was the 10th contact event. This happened in Saskatchewan. All of 1998, I had a contact event practically every month. And it was biological every time. So the 12th one was it happened in September of 1998. And by that time, I started to fight with them. I didn't like it. And I got unruly. And I was also I was getting traumatized myself, because I thought I would end up knowing I was having alien contact. And it's a really disturbing thing to wake up to at the age of 41. Oh my God, I was fighting for my life in my 20s. This guy who couldn't communicate to himself that he was having alien contact. Very disturbing. That happened in the end of 1998, and they didn't budge. There's no, this is what you agreed to, is basically how they framed it. And then the biology got more intense. I kept having contact events to the point where I was like, get out of my life. I don't want you anymore, yelling at them kind of thing. And then they did one more contact event to top off 1998. And they basically showed me how my higher self had agreed to it. Most people who would hear that would probably expect, oh, they deceived you. They probably lied in some way. But you can't lie about your spirit. And the stuff was on their computers, and I could feel I was linked to it, and I could feel it actually answered my own things about myself, some information about traveling and what was going on with me at the time. And I would confirm even to this day at the age of 41, and having been a meditator and knowing my spirit, I believe I know my spirit. I don't believe I know my spirit. I know my spirit. And yeah, it did agree to this. So that's how that went. They gave me more space from some of the contact events. Some things happened in 1999. By 2000, it was kind of the end of traveling period. My traveling would end in the year 2000, and they would be the ones to initiate its end. I wouldn't know that at the time. But the synchronicities that led me to a beautiful woman who would become my girlfriend, who would become my wife, they kind of made all that happen. And there was a sighting between me and my wife, and I felt like a spirit was communicating with me to get with this girl and that kind of stuff. And I didn't know any of that. You know, I didn't know I was having alien contact. And so it turned out to be a very mystical thing that they had put that together. But there was a contact event just like 2 or 3 months before I met my wife that would end traveling, the end of the traveling period. And I was on Cortez Island. I was staying at a farm and I was working on a farm, and I decided to go sleep out on the lake. I had wolves. There was these wolves I could hear in the middle of the night on Cortez Island. It was so powerful. Wolves howling in the depth of the night in these mystical forests. It was so beautiful. And I wanted to sleep out there. And when I did, I turned into a contact event. Basically, I do recall getting out of or standing up and being up and waiting for the craft as it came down. And it was coming over the water. And it was bright, glaring white light. And I couldn't actually see an object, just this flaring light as it was moving over the water. And then it took me in, like, I guess, transport or something, beamed me in. And I was in a single occupant craft that had nobody in it. And I was kind of either immobile, like it was keeping me immobile, or maybe, I don't know. There was all black, so I couldn't really see, except for the cockpit. And there was a swirling blue light, kind of clockwise vortex was happening on the front of console. So, and it really felt like this was a craft that was self-alive, and it was now taking me somewhere. In a weird, intuitive way, I could feel we were going over the ocean. Basically, how much long later, I don't know. Like a door or something, kind of a portal opens up to my right, and I know to move into it, and I get into it, and I get beamed out. And now I'm on this platform, and I'm walking. And I'm actually, at this point, I've had so many contact events. This is my 21st. I'm kind of like, what's going on? Right. So I have this like cocky teenager attitude about it. Though I'm 21, I think, at the time. I can't recall my age at the time. I think it might be 22 maybe. And I've had so many, and I didn't, because the biology occurred and it was disturbing, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, they weren't telling me any big picture. They told me no big picture stuff. So I'm just kind of relentlessly having contact events. And at times I liked them. At times I was like, why? I don't understand what's happening here. It all makes sense now, all these years later, but at the time I didn't understand things. So I get on this plank and I'm walking towards the elder, and there's this other entity she's with. I call her an ancient one. It's kind of like their gurus. These guys have their own wise elders. And she was taller and bigger and had a bigger gray alien head. I have a brief interaction with this entity. The bottom line is that the three of us, walk into this cave. We're now in this base. Sorry, I didn't say this part. We're in the base, and we're clearly underwater because I can hear water dripping, and I can smell it's salt water. And so we're in some kind of like under ocean base or something. And we walk we're going into a cave, and we're walking down a road, or down up this pathway, and then they want me to go into this door. And when I do, there's it's like a crib. It's like a nursery. I don't understand what I'm looking at. It's very fascinating what happens here. I basically look at the ancient one, this taller gray alien, and I look at her, and she basically says, "You were one of these." And I don't understand. And then they almost like kind of want me to look at them. So they just sit there, they stare at me as I go around looking at these things, looking at these cribs. And what they're hybrid babies. So they're human gray alien hybrid babies. I'm like kind of weirded out by it. I walk over to this other crib, and I see at the time I can't make sense of what I'm looking at. It looks like a rat with metal gear over top of its head, and then a cord, or two cords actually, were sticking out and kind of going up to a device above the crib. And I now think this is a baby mantis. But at the time I didn't know what it was. And it had kind of like a snout, and it was wearing a white gown, and it was a baby version of this. And it was kind of like crying like a baby would. And I said, "Why are you showing this to me?" And the ancient alien one says, "Because you will one day be a part of this, and you'll know." And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. And now it means, I think, the present. And that's it's weird. Like this is what they said. And at the time they have no meaning to me, and I can't quite make sense of what they're doing with me. And all these years later, it's like quite obvious actually what's going on. When I get back out, so I don't really know what to do. So then we look, that's it. They showed this to me, and there's not really too much communication about it. We walk out, and then the elder says, ask her anything you want. So they're giving me an opportunity, just like I had with the twin in the 10th contact event. I get to actually ask, some questions, some detailed questions about where they're from, or just some detailed questions about things that maybe were on my mind. Anyway, they didn't really give me too many of these types of opportunities. So I consider it like fulfilling my curiosity was basically how the elder framed it. Fulfill your curiosity. They were always really standoffish about where they were from. So I do ask, okay, fine. Where are you from? And I ask this entity, and the entity tells me Zeta Reticuli. And it's very interesting because I'm not really clear that that's actually the truth anymore. They've showed me some other details that make sense about why they may lie about these things. Not that I think that they were lying. I'm pretty certain they're from an alternate Earth dimension, but those are hard to comprehend at the time. And it wasn't too much information for me. And I thought they were from Zeta Reticuli because I read that somewhere in my human world. And so they were kind of like repeating or regurgitating the information. So yeah, Zeta Reticuli. And so I'm like, but what are you? Like, I don't know what they are. And she basically explains we come from like a long genetic lineage. They're like an amalgamation, that what they actually are, what we look at and we see these gray aliens, they're an amalgamation of genes, of some type of hybrids upon hybrids is basically how it's being framed. And we've been contorted and mixed to create what you're looking at now. But we have too long of a genetic history, but we've been around a lot longer than your human race has been thinking for itself. And so I didn't really understand what she was. And so I asked, what are you? And I'm beyond your comprehension is basically what she frames it. I'm beyond your comprehension. I'm an elder of their ancients. That's how she frames it. And I ground my kind in their mystical knowledge. So this idea that, I don't know, it was this concept that here we were talking about, all this information being exposed to us that's dimensional. So maybe afterlife, paranormal, ghosts, all that stuff being opened up. And you think it might quelch the spiritual experience about all of this. But what's actually being said here was that this entity kind of grounds them in the spiritual experience of their dimensional experience. So it was kind of like framed that way, that they may see their spiritual experience, their dimensional experience as still a spiritual experience. And yet the premise being that they may still have like bhakti or like a devotion, that kind of thing, like this. It doesn't mean you still, when you have understanding about the afterlife, maybe you don't lose, the spirit, the high spiritual experience that you gain out of it. And that's what was kind of being said here. There was still a grounding in a spiritual wisdom that even though they may have understanding about these kind of dimensional contexts. Yeah.
Is it possible that there are levels to this whole multiverse type scenario? And is it possible that perhaps these beings that you're working with and that you have this agreement with, they've gotten to a point where they understand that there's multiverses, they can travel between those multiverses, they're way more advanced than us. But perhaps there's some sort of base reality that even they maybe haven't fully gotten to yet, which is that possibly true?
I do believe that to be true. That's a degree. I think that,
and that's maybe where their spirituality comes from, is that like they know, like to us, they know they're extremely advanced, way more intelligent than we are, way more advanced than we are. But there's still some things about our cosmos and our universe that maybe they don't fully understand, and that's maybe where their devotion and like spirituality still comes from.
Yeah, or like sacredness.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, things being sacred still, that you can still, within this context, you can still have like reverence or sacredness for things. I actually have a theory that even when we are in the afterlife, that we are still living in mystery about the nature of the universe. that that the mystery actually keeps going on, and it goes on in many dimensions in many ways. And then, but what you can do with that mystery, or with what you can do with nature of reality, is much grander. So, and I think that's the level they're living on, is they can create a human experience without a doubt and with ease. Hey, we can make the body, we can make the brain. So then we can put a soul in there, and we can make their reality. We can bend their reality. We can stop time, and we can make them feel like they saw Jesus. We can make them feel things and make them experience things. And I think that they're reality creators in that context. But for the higher self and for the afterlife to still live in mystery, I think it might be a bit because of the nature of the universe and why, and maybe some of the qualities about how you create life are still very mysterious to them. Like, and I got this from telepathy from the elder once. She actually just gave me a metaphor. So this is out of context from the story, but this is just, to cap off what we're talking about. She gave me a metaphor, and she said, there's a blank slate, a pure blank white slate. And this is the universe. This is pure consciousness running through everything. And for her, you draw a circle around the empty space, like just find a spot and draw a circle. Now that is alive, and it starts moving. And they love this. Why does it do that? And not just why, but like, it actually doesn't behave the way you think it would. It actually life behaves in a way with which it doesn't actually start self-reflecting. And the act of self-reflecting has a inverse effect on the dimensional side of all this, the grander side. It has an inverse effect, as opposed to, we just don't think of it that way. And that inverse effect is awareness. So the more that the more the complex the circle can get, so you start creating DNA and start making it more and more complex, the more the inversion creates a permanent imprint. It would be your spirit. So a spirit gets created. And so this is all just fascinating. The physics and the why it does this is like a mystery to them. So the creation of life is just so fascinating, and all the different things you can do and dimensions and bodies and all this stuff. Yeah. So there's still mystery going on here that's grander for even the higher self and the afterlife, I think. And that's the nature of the universe, is the grand mystery of it. And so she explained that to me in the present, and so not in context to the story here. But yeah, so I have a belief that they still live in mystery, and yet they have a grander picture of awareness still, but still live in mystery within it. Yeah.
That gives me some solace, actually, because I had this theory racking around in my brain that, going back to the Google quantum chip Willow, I just had this fear that once we build those nuclear power plants rather, and we have Willow 4.0 or whatever the best version is going to be, that quantum computer is going to basically be a big bang and create another simulation, essentially. And that our universe and everything in it is just a quantum computer sitting on some alien's bookshelf in their dimension. And it's just like every time that a species gets to that point, that's where the multiverse comes from, because it's
right.
Just all these quantum computers. But from your description, I know it's just kind of a theory, but it doesn't sound like that would be true, which made me feel better a little bit. No one knows, though, right? I guess.
Yeah, I do think that planets are stages. And I think the degree with which you might be racking your brain about it, I think, is on the planetary level. We're definitely living in a simulation, and they are involved in some weird way in that simulation. And so I do agree. There's something kind of bigger picture going on here, and a computer is involved. An AI does appear to be involved, and what the degrees of those things are, but nature is also involved, and that's the trick. So nature isn't fake. Nature isn't not real. But what is real is, some version of the way we perceive reality is part of the simulation. The actual fact we have a brain that limits all the information it does, and then puts information into our brain, and we perceive that to be to be reality, and then we build everything off of it. We say water does this, fire does that, earth does this, and wind does that, and then we start building physics around it, and that's all because of the perception of our brain, and that is all some type of simulation. But water might look different outside of the simulation, but it still might exist, right?
Yeah.
Same with other species or other plants or that kind of stuff, right? So spirit is like, I think, the core energy here, and consciousness is the core energy. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff built on top of it. Yeah.
Very, very fascinating stuff.
So, yeah. Okay. So anyway, the bottom line was I got to ask some deep questions, and I got to learn about, at least what this entity's purpose was. They were also taking my biology in the year 1998. This contact event here was 2000. So I finally got to ask why. Why did you do this? Like, why did you need my semen? Because your protoplasm contains ingredients for the stars. I found that to be very fascinating. And then I pressed it, actually. And it's very interesting what she says here, because the universe, so why? But why did you do that? Like, why are you? So, okay, we take your seed and we put it, into other solar systems, into other dimensions or universes or something, other solar systems is my guess. Well, actually, that's what she says, but solar systems. But I press even further and why? But why did you do that? Because the universe is hungry to be born. And so it's a really interesting premise that the bodies exist for a purpose to birth God into the universe, right? Like, there's an idea here and it comes from Vedas, and it comes from some of the kind of more new age ideas. And I believe this because I've experienced it myself, that we're God, that the core awareness of us is God. We are that thing. We're that thing. And then the universe is desiring to have bodies to be born into. And so it gains experience and gains awareness is the idea. And the awareness goes back into the unified field, after said death, that kind of thing. And that's what's being implied here, that the universe is hungry to be born. So, and that's why they make bodies.
You mentioned earlier that religions all over the world have very similar takes on certain things. And that what you just said is, even in Christianity, there's this sentiment that Jesus or God is in all of us, and we're creating His image, and that's why they're here, is to spread life across the universe, essentially.
Yeah, one of the when it comes to the angry mob about gray aliens, I'm like, how dare they take us, that kind of thing. And I'm like, the entities that I know are life preservers, and we might be looked at as the ones who are not. Right? This idea, it's that their involvement with us. Yeah, they're life preservers. The ones I know love life. They love the idea of birthing and genetics and putting things together and making life and spirit. Oh my God, look at the way that thing exists. And they kind of get fascinated by the things that I think their perception also too is grander. So they're seeing maybe more of the psychic content coming out of a head, right? Out of a mind. They might be able to see more detail that we do. And they get really, scientific-y about it and fascinated by it. So yeah, I do know some degree of that is true. So that's very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you work in leadership, if I remember correctly, right? And we share that. And it's really interesting what you're saying, because I'm thinking it almost kind of like, okay, leadership, upper management, and frontline employees have different perception of things, right? Of the job.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, we have this getting mind, we have this ego, and we think that our life is special and that there is no proof of afterlife, and this is all I got, and very self-centered, right? But if you think about it, maybe Earth is so precious, and maybe the planet is so and that is such a rarity, and that's something that we as humans should be taking care of, like you said. And maybe so much so that we're so overpopulated that we're destroying the earth and we're taking the resources from it. We're treating it like crap and all those things like that. And just as a leader has a different perspective of a business than a frontline employee, maybe perhaps these creatures are saying, your life, believe it or not, doesn't really matter, because you have a spirit, and that spirit is part of this internal consciousness. So, it sounds crazy, but like maybe like a couple 100,000, maybe a million, a couple million of you guys should maybe probably die. Your physical body should be no more. but this is for the greater good. And if you look at it that way, it doesn't seem so evil. It seems like, oh, okay, like they're actually preserving the thing that matters. They're preserving the Earth, the planet that it's so special.
I am so certain this is actually the truth, and this is why I'm not even clear the government will oversee it. I'm certain this what's on the table is some type of planet event that does mass damage, and the other twist isn't it might not even be as detached as that. It's like it's detached from the physical death, the corporal death, but spirits there are cases, and I have it in my first contact event. Spirits can exist on their crafts. So imagine a weird scenario where there's mass death, and then all of a sudden, the person you loved, you can actually access them here.
Yeah.
You can hang out, you can talk with them as if they're just still alive. Like, wait, what? Like, this is like, it's a weird twist of the head. And I'm 100% convinced they're that detached. And I think that they've been trying to bring us up to speed on that type of reality. And I think that they gave that information to a bunch of government, politician people and maybe military men, and they turned it into Stargate, and they did, they didn't divulge that information the way maybe they could have. That would have helped us all. But yeah.
Yeah. I just had this recent revelation too, and you could tell me if you agree with this or not, that our solar system is so weird in the vastness of space and all the solar systems that we're aware of and things like that. The fact that our moon is the size that it is, and what it does for us with the tides, and even is like a little bit like a little baby shield and it gets some, asteroids and comets and stuff hit that rather than us. And then you look at like even Jupiter, and that is like such a massive planet compared to other planets in the solar system. It's very rare. And even the position that it's in our solar system, how far it is away from our sun, is also very rare. And that kind of acts as like a bodyguard to protect us from, like, there's all these factors in our solar system that make life so unique here on Earth.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder, like, if you have a level 3 or type 3 civilization that can harness the power of a galaxy, they could probably move planets. They could probably, almost like a video game, like create a solar system, right? And kind of set it up correctly for life. And maybe that, going back to that great filter idea, and even thinking back to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Graham Hancock's work with like the Younger Dryas.
Yeah, familiar with Graham Hancock and some of his work. Yeah, I've seen him talk a lot on Joe Rogan. I do like his content. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I really like him a lot too. I think he makes some really valid points.
Yep.
That back before before the last ice age, the Younger Dryas event, there was a impact to happen on Earth.
Yeah,
and there were floods and fires, and but it didn't kill us off. It really weakened our planet in terms of the number of humans that were there, but it didn't kill us off. And makes me wonder, like, was that intentional? Perhaps, maybe that was a protection of Earth. Like, we got to reset here. And then there's even evidence of advanced civilizations.
Yeah, before
that. So it's definitely, the ego is saying this is scary, but I think we've kind of connected a couple pieces here.
Yeah. I think we're going to find that this is what I'm pretty convinced of, that the mantis who's in charge of this entire thing. So there's a controller species here. So grays are just the front of this stuff. And the grays are the ones who maybe work with this mantis species, but also have their own existence that seems to be shared with our planet in some way. And the mantis appear to be outside of time. So then you can imagine a wacky scenario of an entity who's interacting with us, who maybe is a creator species. So they involve themselves with creating human bodies and civilizations and realities and simulations, right? And birth after life and death, birth cycle type styles. And so here they are creating humanity, and it wouldn't be too much for them to create something tens of millions of years ago and then speed up the watch and jump back in, only a million years ago, and be like, how did that look? Oh, hey, look at that. How did it turn out? Right. And for them, it was like a day. And for us, it's like tens of millions of years. And then they just keep interjecting. and it's all just a game for them. Not a game, but sciencey and life creator and with God tech. So then they're utilizing the God power of creating life after death, and they're doing it all on purpose for the purpose of birthing souls. And there's this grander picture going on, and they're outside time while they're doing it. And then if they're outside time, then it answers why the mystery of how aliens have been here the entire time really don't look like they've been here the entire time. And is that they actually may have just had huge gaps where for them it's a week, and for us it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of years. And it all of a sudden makes a really wild picture that they could just interject at any point of our history and say, oh yeah, time for that one to switch up now. And we do have, I think there's some corroborative evidence for me that they do they can do some things like throw meteors at planets to create new changes and new events. There's a government doc that John Keel, well, he wasn't a government guy, but he has some corroborative evidence. He wrote it in the 1960s that he got from the government and wrote it into a document. And his stuff matches my contact events. Some of it word for word, what the elder said to me regarding humans having alien DNA. John Keel talks about the aliens' abilities to create cataclysms. Yeah. So you're totally right with that. There's definitely an ability here for them to do things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, I always use the analogy too that if we were them, if we let's fast forward our civilization and, quantum AI, we find out parallel universes, all these things, we become a type 1, maybe even a type 2.
Yeah.
And let's say we, going more of a traditional route, I guess, in terms of what we think these beings are. Let's say we found a planet 100 light years over that have creatures on it, but that they're maybe not intelligent like us, right? You got to tell me that we wouldn't go over there and check it out with probes and maybe hide in their oceans over there and maybe abduct some of them. Maybe we have the ability to stop time or to, with gravity, we can understand that better too. And manipulate the DNA with CRISPR and all these, of course we would do that. That's what we would do. We would go over there and
learn.
Yeah. To learn and to also, to use the leadership example again, to be almost like a mentor.
Right.
We're going to create this civilization, and we're going to see if we can create an intelligent one that's like ours. Because we need more members on our team or something, and we need to, like you said, the universe needs life. It's hungry for life.
Yeah,
so
right.
maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Speculation, obviously, but
I think it's all in the right direction. I think regardless, it's all in the right direction, and it's good because it creates the mystery. We don't really know what's going on, but at the same time, we're getting pieces of the puzzle, and we're thinking that way. And we'll be one step ahead from the person who has not even thought about this yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's millions of them right now, if not billions. So
I'd rather be on that side. I mean, I think this whole thing has been a really excellent thought experiment for me personally, just to again, I think a lot of people need to start just opening up their minds and just removing the judgment and just seeing where it goes. Because I think if they start to do that, I mean, there's people that are science-minded. I consider myself science-minded and fact-based and things like that. And even normal society, quantum physicists have said, look at the double slit, look at the Fibonacci sequence. That's another really weird one that kind of looks like there's a creator that's copy and pasting code, right? In a way, there's all these things that kind of start to even if you don't look at the fringe, if you just look at just main science, and so you can start putting pieces together a little bit. And we're at that point, and that's an exciting thing for sure. Yeah, agreed. So I know your story has a lot more components to it, but I mean, how do you feel about that? Is there anything else you'd want to add to it? I don't want to short sell it, but I feel like we've covered a lot of really interesting things, and I almost don't want to cover everything because, like I said, I do want people to go buy your book. Yeah. I'm never too concerned about that. Most people just want to hear the information, and I think that, I'm okay either way. I think let me just think if I can summarize. So we got the hybrids coming, and that's the gist of what they are telling me. So I end traveling. There's one last contact event that happens that caps off the entire traveling period. That was 2001, that contact event is, and it's my 23rd.
So technically, from the first contact event when I was 16 years old, the first one I talked about you with, that's the beginning. And then the 23rd is the end of this period of my life where I was involved with gray aliens. And so it's technically 6 years. And I was actually, no, it's longer than that. It's 1993 to 2001. So 7, 8
years.
Is it 8 years? 8 years. Yeah. So
8
8 years of
yeah.
my life has aliens basically in it, with an event, with a plan on their behalf to help me discover my soul. And then there was another plan that I didn't know about really, to use biology and then to keep me around, and they would give me information that would help them when my memories would come out. And so it's kind of more of the bigger plan stuff. They explain some DNA stuff to me in the 23rd contact event, but there's the last one that happens, but it's not too important. Then there's a gap, and this is me growing up as an adult. So 2001, I was probably 24, maybe 23. They come back 7 years later. I'm 29 or 30 at the time. And they're always showing up at pivotal moments in my life. So me and my wife were getting married, and I got a job. I was a senior manager at a company, and life was looking good. And then, they show up, and I have no knowledge at this point. The guy who is the me that knows them, it's such an alternate universe. It's impossible to pick up. It's like impossible to see it or to feel it or to hear it or to touch it. And so when they take me, first off, I have all the memories come back, and I'm walking home literally in broad daylight, and I'm taken, and as if like there's an invisible craft, and they just boosh. And so I'm immediately inside the craft, and I become this me that knows them, that is 7 years old, 7 years older. I mean, yet the memories are fresh as if they happened yesterday, which is all part of my analysis of my brain of like, okay, what part of me were they opening up? Because what's fascinating when I haven't seen them in 7 years, I feel like the contact event I had in 2001 was just yesterday. So 7 years ago. So this would have been 2009 or something, 2008, 2009. So it feels like it was just yesterday. So it's a really weird thing that's happening in my brain, and it has me scientifically analyzing how could that be possible? What's actually happening here? And so I'm transforming. I could feel this kind of effect because I had been living this other life for such a long time. So it really had a really weird biological effect on my body when I became the me that knows them. And when I kind of come to, I'm sitting. So I got transported into a sitting craft, and the elder is driving it beside me. And it's a black craft, pure black, with black windshields. So I can't see out any of the windows. And I can feel from the intelligence of the craft we're moving up. And so now I have like, I've adapted to some of the quantum tech stuff, so I can feel the craft, and I can feel it moving up, and like I have like in my own evolution in the story too. It's really wild, and I'm a bit blown away, and I'm like, hi, as I kind of game myself, and she's like, hi, and it's like I'm trying to gaining myself, and then the craft, I can feel something is coming, like a kind of a larger object, and then there's no mechanical stuff going on here. There's not a locking, we technically merge with a craft, like a mothership. There's no scent, like I don't hear any, gates or metallic
crunching or anything.
Things opening up. There's nothing like that. It's all of a sudden the back door just opens up, and we're in almost like we're in a tiny pod, and now a back spot just opens up, and we walk out, and now I'm walking with the elder, and I'm like, how you been? Like, how have you been? And she's like, I've been good. And it's very interesting. And I'm like, it's been a long time since I've seen you. And she's like, I know, but we've been keeping track of you. And it's like, oh, and then she comes around a corner and she says, they want to see you. And she presses, I'm like, someone wants to see me. She presses a button, or like a door opens, and inside are these tiny gray aliens. They're like children. And they have my genetics in them, and I can feel that they're mine, and they're bonded to me. And it becomes this weird moment where technically I'm getting married to my wife, and I'm learning I have children with gray aliens. It's such a strange thing to do to me. And it's a bit shocking and weird all at the same time. And yet, really neat. I don't know. I know I've heard other people's stories about this, and they all get terrified and freaked out. I was in shock actually. And I felt joy for these little creatures, and they wanted to see me, and they kind of ran up to me, and they had like weird tufts of hair on their faces and stuff. Cause like I have curly hair. And as a kid, I had like light brown curly hair, and they have that weird light brown curly hair on their face and like on weird blotches, like it's weird genetics have happened, and they weren't affected by that weirdness, and they were like really wanted to interact with me. And anyway, there's an exchange there that like are they talking about these babies. But what's really interesting that happens is okay, we interact there, and she explains that, I ask, these are our kids, and she says yes, and I ask who raises them, and she says the community raises them. And then I also actually put together at that point, that's the first time ever. So, many, many years after traveling, I actually say, oh, wait a minute, you knew what was going to happen. So they understood my life. They knew I was going to go be with a guru, which is what happened when I met my wife. I followed her back to Toronto in 2000, and I met my guru, and so it's clear to me at that point, okay, you had me turn into an orb. I discovered my soul, and now I'm with a guru. Like, it actually made sense. And it made sense too, that I couldn't have done it it's clear to me they wouldn't have done what they did had I not had a guru. Like, there was something really weird here where the guru actually helped me understand some of what happened to me, the spiritual event that occurred to me, the mysterious 1997 Discover My Soul event. And so there was a real clear piece that didn't make sense when I was with them, and now all of a sudden was coming together. And it's really clear they saw my future, and they understood what was going to happen in my life. And it was like, oh, like I didn't all that pictures, all the cogs are kind of moving in my head. Like, wow, they understood. And I said something along the lines of like, so you knew my future, what was going to happen? And she said, yes, I told you we know everything about you. And she said this to me in a many years ago, prior contact event, that we know everything about you and what's going to happen with you. And at that point, it started to make sense. They really did know what my entire life, like what was going to happen. And it's really weird. I can't remember how the conversation transitions, all in the book, of course. The change is about to happen. So she says, anyway, somehow something gets approached, and I ask, somehow she says it, the change is about to happen. And I said, what change? And so children leave, the gray alien children, and then it's time to go up to a computer console. And when I'm walking up to a computer console, she touches something, and a hologram of the Earth appears. It's my second planet Earth hologram that I see. And basically I'm seeing a tropics, like a kind of circles going around it, kind of identifying a tropic, like the equator and the tropics, the two tropics, and then a pole going through the North Pole, and it's tilting. And so they're showing me that some kind of like electromagnetic shift, like electromagnetic, something is going to budge in the planet, something's going to tilt and shift. It's going to create some kind of planet event, some kind of, basically the impression was something on the surface will crack and it will cause damage, something enough that would be a planetary event. And that's why I say, what's this? There's a pole going through, and I see it tilting over. And so I can feel that directly from the hologram. And so I say, when does this occur? And she says, soon, we're holding it off. And so that's a really weird line, right? Why? Because to get humans ready, to get us ready, it's going to cause the waves. And when it does, that's when we are going to take charge. That's when we put the new seeds onto the planet. And that's what you've been a part of, making our new home. It's this really intense line, right? And the seeds obviously being the hybrids. And that's a clear message to me. The hybrids that I saw, that I was all a part of, that I witnessed grow up as babies and everything, are now being told to me that after some type of planet event, we deposit them onto the planet. So at that point, she does explain that there's going to be some type of dimensional shift here. And she explains it like this. At a depth, the planet produces a charge that feeds the life living around it. And that charge will be altered and changed, producing a new frequency on your planet. And that's when we step in to take charge of the new frequency. It will be a dimensional shift on your planet, and your species will have the proper stock of genes to make use of it, implying gray alien genes. And we will do it together, humans and our species. Do you understand this? So this sounds too wacky, too crazy, too nutty. Dimensional shift? What are you talking about? You know, electromagnetic frequencies are frequencies. That is what they are. And there is a tie there to consciousness. We have some medical research behind this now that consciousness and electromagnetic frequencies change. Humans can actually sense the electromagnetic field of the earth. So if you were to change something about the electromagnetic field of the planet, would you be altering our consciousness, our experience, our personal experience? Would you be therefore allowing some other entities that occupy a different frequency of electromagnetic frequency, would they be able to now inhabit or work with us or be with us? So something like that is being implied here. That's something of much more bigger scale is going on, where, you know, they're changing the planet, they're depositing their hybrids, which is what they were building. And this is the kind of the new world that they're creating. And it's not domination. It's not evil. It's not politics. It's not dictators. It's not war. It's not militaries. It's not control. It's, you know, from all my experience, there'll be more freedoms in their world than there are in the one we have right now. So it's much different, and I don't think we're prepared for actually how advanced it actually is, what's being said here. And that's the gist of it. In the last contact event, my 25th, after this one, it'll be another 8 years. That's when she says, we'll be coming. There's a new city. Tell them about this. Tell them we're coming. Tell the public. Tell your world that we're coming, and we want you to write it into a book. And I actually got instructed to write a book, and so it contains all this detail. Yeah, that's the gist of it. What's fascinating now is how much of it is all matching up. I went public before. You know, I was public first before, like, even Lou Elizondo was talking, but he only talked to like CNN and, you know, MSNBC, and he didn't in Fox. Now he's all podcasts. Like, that didn't start until, you know, a couple of years ago. And his words, like him and Ross Colfort and Bob Bigelow, all these guys were public after I gone public, and all my stuff is matching that with their content. All of it, like all these degrees, everything they're saying. For me, this is it. This is the big picture. This is what's going on. This is what's been happening for decades behind us. And I think humans have actually had to get up to speed on a lot of different things, afterlife being real, and paranormal, and then the quantum, and then hybrids, and then, but they're not bad, even though they made hybrids, and there was this whole fear that they were abducting people, and mantis species. And so there's such a massive scale of pictures going on here, I think created all the confusion. And yeah, but I'm pretty certain this is the big picture, that they're coming in this kind of big way. So
The whole time you were talking about that, it made me think about the Younger Dryas, and that maybe this is not the first time that this has happened.
I don't doubt that at all. Yeah.
And that maybe the previous civilization, they were just like, this isn't working, let's hit the reset button. They were making hybrids back then. Younger Dryas happened, and maybe a few hundred humans survived that, but then they released other hybrids then, and that's what we are. And now we got to a certain point, and they're like, reset button, and they have hybrids that are, same thing's going to happen.
I'm going to say something even wilder, that I imagine the entire, maybe for different periods with the human race going through stuff like this, it was conscious. We were aware, and they were talking to us about it. And they might even have said, humans, we have this great plan, and, you know, and you guys will be less conscious of your full potential, and it'll help with your spirits, and you'll develop these great ways, and it'll be this great thing for you, and you won't remember us, but we'll all do it together, and we'll still be there for you, and you know, that kind of thing. And they would talk like that with us, and we're advanced enough on our own to say, you know what, my spirit will develop. Like, imagine that. Imagine we consciously, because I'm convinced that to some degree that happened in our own past, that when they were making our bodies, they're saying, how does that body feel? And you're like, hey, I love this body. This is working great. So it's not this, you know, evil mad scientist thing going on. There's a lot more, you know, transparency. And because that's the way they've been with me. When I didn't understand things, they kept things obscure, but they worked towards me having transparency. And I just can't see them interacting in these kind of more creator mysterious ways, especially when we know that things were more advanced to some degree in the past. I'm just convinced that they switch up these things. I think that's the bigger stuff. They switch up, and maybe we were much more advanced with using their tech, and that's why we don't have signs of it. Because if you were using their tech, you might not be leaving imprints on the planet. So
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, because that's what people always say. Well, where are the tools? Where's the signs of civilization back then? Well, I mean, they could have been using different tools and different. Like, we're trying to wrap our perception of reality, how we currently live, with how it was always. But that's, I mean, the pyramids are there. We have no idea how the pyramids were built in any way, like at all. Like, people have theories, sure, but it's still one of the greatest, mysteries on this planet. And I mean, you mentioned aliens with the pyramids, and people kind of roll their eyes, but like, what, you think it was just like slave labor and like wet sand, like and ramps? I mean, that seems even more crazy, in my opinion, than what we're talking about.
and the fact that it doesn't appear to have a tomb purpose.
Yeah.
And then they still can't nail what the purpose is. And they're still having trouble with the purpose. And I think for the mind of ancient man, Roman still couldn't understand exactly why they would put all this effort into these things. It's such a crazy, it's such a wild creation. And yeah, agreed.
Interesting, man. Well, I mean, what do you think? Is that a good place to end it, you think?
Sure.
You feel good about it?
Yeah, Justin, yeah.
It's so funny. When I messaged you on Reddit, I was like, yeah, this would be a good like hour conversation. And here we are, like probably close to five hours later.
Yeah.
And we're still going. I still could talk to you forever. So
yeah, they pummeled me, they like with all this content, like, and it's just done it at such a wild time, and everything's very purposeful on their behalf. And yeah, one guy, I had a video. I did a video series at Vancouver UFO when I first went public, and I made every single every single contact event went in depth, and I produced well over 50 videos. So that's just the amount. That's every contact event coming out and talking about because every contact event was a rabbit hole for something. They talked about genetics on one contact event, and another they talk about the human mind, and then they talk about spirit, and then they talk about Venus, or I go to Venus. And so there's everything with a depth I could go into. And yeah, it's packed. My stuff is jam packed. So yeah, there's no quick way to do it.
But I'm appreciative of it, because it's just really fascinating. Like, everything you said, it checks out, and I'll be honest with you. And I think maybe even some of the listeners that are listening will probably feel the same way. And I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. Is when I first met you and I first heard you talk, I was just like, it was like ontological shock a little bit. I was like, hold on a second. This guy is saying a lot of words and a lot of crazy things. It required effort. I'll say that, to really try to get on the same wavelength as you tell the story. But once I did, I felt like I was on like a roller coaster or something. Like I got on this cart with you, and we just went down this thing. And on the other side of it, I'm very thankful of it.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Yeah. I'm stuck with it, right? Like there's this weird, I knew this problem when I was writing the first edition of my book. And you have to believe in visioning. You have to believe in God, and believe in the afterlife, and believe in paranormal, and believe in psychic abilities to just accept the story, and then never mind what the story is doing and what the story is talking about and what the story is all about. And that's a whole other level. And I was like, this is super advanced. It's what it is. It's like and I'm stuck with it. So, and here's this instruction to write this book. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Like, no. So, and I was a grounded guy. I am a grounded guy. And, 41, having the banks and the MBA, never mind people not believing visioning in the afterlife. This has got aliens involved. So it's just going to sound just cuckoo for people. And I had no choice but to just talk the way I was talking and do it the best I could, and, try to analyze and provide the science that I can when I do. But you got it. I'm stuck with it being so big of the scale that it is, that's clearly the purpose, I think, is to not to shock people, but to put this in people's sphere it's not uncommon for me to be doing an interview and having the podcaster look like he's plastered or to have a comment like that in my YouTube channel, or to have a comment like that in Reddit. And and I'm just, and this is what has been put upon me. And obviously this is what they wanted, and it's helping. That's the other twist, is that there's tons of people who get helped by it. Other contactees and experiencers who really get answers from my content, which I'm really grateful for. But it's also pushing the spiritual conversation, which I'm so grateful for, because I also love doing that too. So.
As Jeff stands inside the craft, staring at hybrid beings suspended in tubes, the weight of the revelation sets in. The Greys aren't just observers, they are architects. Rebuilding, modifying, preparing for something bigger than we can even imagine. The old world is fading, and a new one is being constructed in its place. But what does all this mean for us? If humanity has failed its task, as the Greys claim, what comes next? Is there still a chance to change course? Or is our fate already sealed? Jeff's experiences challenge everything we think we know about evolution, consciousness, and our place in the universe. His journey isn't over yet, because as we inch closer to disclosure, the world is starting to catch up to what he's known for years. A big, serious shout out to Jeff Selver for spending countless hours with me while I record these episodes. I had a great time talking to him, and I hope he feels the same. And I hope all of you really enjoyed his experiences as much as I did. Please do me a favor and check out Jeff Selver's YouTube channel. I will link it in the description. And if you want to hear his story in complete detail, make sure to check out his book as well, which is also linked. This episode was produced and edited by Justin Gearhart, mixed and mastered by Brett Jarvis. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a 5-star rating. It really does help the show. And share it with a friend. We're always looking for new club members, especially if one of your friends has an experience to share. And if that's the case, email us at stories@closeencounterclub.com. All right, that's all for this one. Thank you so much for being here and sticking to the end. And you've been listening to the Close Encounter Club.